All right, if you have a Bible, please turn to Mark chapter 2. We are in verses 13 through 17 this morning. Mark chapter 2, verses 13 through 17. This is a section of Mark where there are 5 short stories all lined up in a row, giving us insight into Jesus' ministry taking place with active resistance and opposition coming against him. In Mark chapter 1, when Jesus began his ministry took off with excitement and with eagerness. The people were really behind him. But now in Mark chapter 2, we see that there are people now popping up who disapprove of Jesus. They have some sort of aversion to his ministry. And there is a literary device called a chiastic structure, which is on the bulletin, and I'm also having it on the screen for you. This is a literary device that we do not use today in how we write. When we're forming an argument and trying to convince people of something, we do an introduction, a thesis statement, our main points, and our conclusion. That is how we write today. But that is not how they wrote in the ancient world. And chiastic structures were very, very common, and it was a literary device to show you what the author was leading you to in terms of the key thesis or argument that they're making. So if you look at the screen, you have a mirroring device where what you say in the first section, you mirror that in the last section. What you say in your second section, you mirror in your second to last section. A chiastic structure can have many sections to it. Ours actually only has 5, so it's a very simple one to notice. And what Mark is doing is he's pointing us to verses 18 to 22, where Jesus' disciples do not fast. They are questioned about that, and then Jesus gives a reply. That is the heart of the argument for Mark. What is going on is Mark is showing us in the 5 stories that there are people that do not like Jesus, and they are resisting Jesus, and these verses in 18 through 22 are going to give us the clearest understanding as to why Jesus is being resisted. So that's going to be talked about next Sunday, which means nobody can miss church, because then you're going to miss the entire argument of what's going on in these 5 weeks that we're looking in Mark. Last week, we saw that the scribes took offense to Jesus forgiving a man's sins. Here today now, we're going to see that the Pharisees are upset that Jesus is eating with tax collectors and sinners. So to frame our time together today, I want to use this idea of course corrections. What is a course correction? A course correction is the need for us to make adjustments in our direction, our trajectory, our pursuits, and or our plans. Now, I don't know if there's anyone in this room that is like me, but I do not like asking for directions. Can anyone agree with that? Is anyone else here that's like that? One person, Anthony, thank you. So I am only the 2 of us are the only people in this room that don't like asking for directions. When I'm driving and I'm feeling lost, I like to remain confident in my own abilities that I will find my way to the destination. There's a comedian by the name of Yakov Smirnoff who has a short take on why men stereotypically do not like asking for directions. Let's take a quick look.
Man will drive around lost for hours without asking for directions. Right? We have a strong belief that the earth is round, eventually we'll get there. Well, let me give you a little secret, ladies. Men do stop and ask for directions when women are not in the car. You know why? Because we're embarrassed in front of you. We want you to believe we're strong and we know where we're going, even though we have no clue. We got it from our dad. He was embarrassed, and he didn't want to stop for directions. His dad did the same thing. I trace as far back as Moses. He was lost in the desert for 40 years. He'd be out of there in an hour if he'd ask for direction. Man will...
He hits on the core reason why we don't like asking for directions, and that is because it makes us feel weak. It makes us feel like we're not self-sufficient. It's embarrassing to ask for somebody else's help. You're basically putting yourself in a stranger's hands and telling them, guide me. It's making this admission that we're not capable of figuring something out on our own. It makes us feel vulnerable. Thankfully, there has been the invention of the iPhone with GPS, so I never have to ask for directions ever again. We went to Toronto, my wife and I, for an anniversary trip for our 10-year anniversary, so this was close to 15 years ago. And we planned for the trip. We got everything together, and we drove through Michigan, drove through Detroit, and then we made our way into Canada to get to Toronto. And one thing that we did not plan for was the fact that our cell phones were not going to work once we got into Canada. Our plan did not have that option to it, and it was either the phone didn't work or you could turn on a roaming option, I think, that would be super expensive. So what we did is once we realized we're not able to use the phone, we pulled off side of the road to some store, and I went in and I bought one of those maps, like that you unfold and it's like an accordion of the area, so that I could now navigate and make my way to Toronto. I went out to the car and I opened that map up and I laid that map flat on the roof of the car, preparing myself, studying it, just trying to figure out what I needed to do and give myself a sense of the plan. Well, I was now in Canada, where everybody is so helpful that every person in that parking lot was stopping by to try to help me. Like, are you lost? Do you need something? Do you need help? And I was getting irritated because I'm like, I can figure this out. I don't need you. Now, this is not just an issue that us men face, because when it comes to navigating through life, all of us tend to be resistant to any course corrections. We tend to not want to let others in to give us advice, to direct us or guide us. We're going to figure this thing called life out on our own. We've got this. And if there is any sort of course correction that's necessary, I'm going to come to that realization myself. Sadly, many of us are floundering our way through life, feeling lost, unfulfilled, confused, depressed, anxious, afraid. There might be something in us that we know that we need to course correct, but we're refusing to do it. Some of us are under the belief that we can just keep plowing through, just stay the course, and we're going to just will our way out of this wilderness that we're in. Others of us were taking matters into our own hands. We're willing to experiment with all sorts of things, tinker with this and that, trying to find what looks right to us and what's good to us, and use our own wisdom and our own intuition to try to find our way. And then others of us are just trying to ignore the fact that we're off course, we're numbing ourselves, or we're avoiding our feelings or the situation that we know that we're in. The good news in our passage this morning is that Jesus is declaring, I have come to help the sick. Isn't that such good news? That Jesus came to help us, to help those of us who just don't have it all together. Now, that's only good news if you and I can admit that we're sick. You know, when I go to the doctor, and I'm really good about going for my yearly checkup, there's always some sort of course correction that the doctor is trying to give me. Hey, you need to take more vitamins, some more vitamin D. Maybe you should eat less food or more healthy food, or and whatever it might be. Some of us might be told hey, it might be a good idea to stop smoking, stop drinking, or whatever. Adjust your lifestyle so that you'll be healthier. They look at our cholesterol and our blood tests, and they're making these judgments and trying to help us make course corrections, right? Maybe we end up in the hospital. Maybe we need surgery. Maybe we need physical therapy to move on from that surgery. There's just things and guidance hey, take this medicine, have this procedure done, go do these exercises. The medical field is basically a lot of encouraging us into course corrections. Now, I don't like asking for directions, and I'll also admit to you that I do not like going to the doctor. So when I get sick, I am under the belief that I am just going to power through and my body is going to heal itself. Like, I don't even like taking medicine. I don't know if there's anybody here that's like me. Even if I develop a headache, and I'm like, you know what, I don't need that. My body's going to be just fine. So I don't like asking for directions. I don't like going to the doctor. Like, if I get, like, really sick, I'll just minimize what I'm going through and just being like, it's just a scratch. Tis only a flesh wound. Even at home, like, my wife will, like, do things to try to help take care of me. And I'm like, I got it. Leave me alone. We get frustrating. In our story this morning, we find Jesus encountering Levi, who's also known as Matthew, who writes the Gospel of Matthew. And Levi is a Jewish tax collector who is in need of a course correction in life. Just a few verses earlier, Jesus called Simon and Andrew to be his disciple. And now here we have Jesus calling Levi to be his disciple. But there's a really big difference in these callings, because the Simon and Andrew calling, they were both called away from a life of fishing. But what we're going to find out is that Levi is being called away from a life of greed, a life of cheating, and a life of unethical behavior. Now, to help paint this picture, I'm going to read an excerpt that has been written by James Roquefort. And it's a touch long, but just bear with me, because this is going to help set the stage for us to understand the depravity of tax collectors, okay? So, how did the Romans collect taxes? The Romans formed joint stock companies where they would buy certain Jewish provinces for periods of 5 years. These businessmen would employ local Jewish men to collect the taxes from these territories. The tax collectors would then tax imports, exports, bridge tolls, road money, town dues, and much more. The highest bidder would win the territory, and consequently, the tax collectors would skim money off the top for themselves. What were the methods of the tax collectors? These methods were unethical, to say the least. For one, these tax collectors would harass people wherever they could. They would tax them on the spot. So even if a different tax collector shook you down from money up the road, you could be taxed again by another collector just hours or minutes later. Second, they would also place an inflated and fictitious value on property or income in order to get a higher percentage of tax. Third, they would give loans to people who couldn't pay the tax and then charge high interest on this private debt. So what options did the Jewish people have? In short, none. These tax collectors were backed by the authority of the Roman Empire, and they were accompanied by Roman soldiers. Furthermore, if a Jewish person wanted to appeal to a judge for unjust tax collecting, this was of no use because the judges were the direct beneficiaries by the revenue. In other words, even the judges themselves were bribed. This was an incredibly corrupt system. It was highly oppressive on the people. And Levi is one of the individuals that is doing this work against his own people. Here was a Jewish man being employed by Romans that were making Romans rich, and it was a complete betrayal that Jewish society saw. These individuals, like Levi, were despised in society. These taxes that were being collected were not really used to fix roads. They weren't used to fund other public improvements. It wasn't a system set up like we have today where we pay our taxes and we know that that money is going to this or that. No, the money was just collected to make those who owned the province rich. There was no real services that were provided. Listen to what Timothy Gombis writes about tax collectors in Israel. Tax collectors were considered traitors to the Jewish people and were therefore despised. They are lumped together with sinners, not merely because they and other sinners happen to be imperfect people. These are well known for their apparent disregard of God's law. They are notorious sinners, professional sinners, since by doing their job they are serving Rome and fostering the presence of impurity and uncleanliness in Israel. Are we starting to get the picture that Levi's life was in need of course correction? He had gotten way off track. He wasn't even close to the track. He had lost the plot to the story. He had been making choices and was pursuing things that he needed rescue from. And here, Jesus comes onto the scene, passes by his toll booth, and invites Levi and says, "Would you please come and follow me?" This reminds me of the story of Saul being called on the road to Damascus. Saul was the top persecutor of Christians in his day. He was the worst of the worst. And yet Jesus shows up on the road to Damascus and says, it's time to make a course correction, and Saul becomes Paul and becomes one of the greatest disciples in the kingdom of God. Levi is despised, but yet here Jesus approaches this booth that nobody wants to deal with this man. Nobody likes this man. And Jesus goes up to him and believing that Levi's life could be redeemed, believing that Levi wasn't a lost cause and that he could still change things around, he calls him and he invites him and says, "Would you please course correct and follow me?" And guess what Levi does? Levi responds to Jesus. He was probably in the midst of extorting people in the moment. He's at work, he's in his job, he's in his little toll booth, and he's charging exorbitant things. Everything that he's doing is unethical and wrong. And here Jesus walks up to him in the midst of his sin, in the midst of his greed, in the midst of him stealing from the poor, in the midst of his lying, his cheating, and his scheming, and he says, "Come follow me." And it is in this moment that Levi realized that he had had enough. He was ready to change, and he was ready to start on a new path. But the transformation that happens here with Levi making a course correction is only half of the story in this passage. The other people in the story are the Pharisees. And this is the first time Mark introduces us to the Pharisees in his book. And they see Jesus. They see him not only calling Levi, but then going to Levi's house, and it says that many other tax collectors and sinners came for dinner, and they were all under that roof. And the Pharisees, they were disgusted by this. Did you know that Pharisees had dedicated their entire life to pursuing righteousness, purity, and cleanliness? And in that pursuit, they had a rule that they would not eat in any other home other than the home of a Pharisee. Because to do so would be to get too close to sinners who were gross and defiled. Not only did they not want to get close to them, they saw what they were doing, their actions of refusing to invite others into their home or to go to other people's homes. They saw it as them giving these sinners motivation to change. Like, I know that you want to eat with me so badly, but I'm not going to let you until you get your life right. Can you begin to imagine, can we all begin to imagine how disgusted and reviled the Pharisees must have been to see Jesus eating at a tax collector's house filled with many other tax collectors? Like the defilement that was going on there. It probably made their skin crawl. It probably caused their stomachs to turn, which is the same reaction I had when I opened the door to an outhouse in Cedar Rapids, Iowa on the 4th of July, right after the fireworks show had ended. But that's a story for another day. It's not just Levi who was off track. The Pharisees were off track. They too were not even close to the path that they were supposed to be on. But what we see in our story is that there is only one group of individuals who course corrects. Levi and the other tax collectors. You know who doesn't make a course correction? The Pharisees. Which opens us up to a really difficult truth that we have to hear this morning, church. That it is often religious people who have the harder time course correcting when it is needed. Because when we do all these right things and do all these pursuits and try to pursue spirituality and God and religion, and sometimes this self-righteousness creeps in, and this pride creeps in, and a sense of rightness creeps in, and a sense of superiority over others creeps in. And for us to admit that we are getting off track or have gotten off track when it feels like we've put so much effort to be on the right track, well, that just feels more embarrassing, doesn't it? It's pretty humiliating. Sometimes we're blinded. We don't even see that we've made a wrong turn. We think that we're so justified in how we are living and how we are navigating life. I think we also have to talk about that, yes, sometimes we as followers of Christ or as Christians, we know that we need to make a course correction, but what's stopping that correction from happening is because of the environment that we are in. Churches, houses of worship, become places where we shun people in their vulnerability when they admit, I don't have it all together. Churches become places where we would rather play nice and play fake with one another than be real with one another. We're in this environment where we feel trapped because I need to be real, I want to be authentic, I'm not perfect, but I'm in an environment where everyone is pretending that they are. So many churches have lost the plot as well. Instead of being places where the hurting, the lonely, the broken, the confused, the rebellious are welcomed and loved, and we are able to admit our faults and our failures and to say, I need to course correct. Oh, we can't do that because this is a Pharisee's house. This passage is leading us to one key question that we all have to be asking ourselves this morning. Am I in need of some form of a course correction? Have I gotten off track? Where have I gotten off track? In what ways am I doing life, living, or something that is just not sort of just like the way, the design that God has for me? And where is Jesus inviting me and calling me to say, hey, I love you. Let's go this way. Maybe we're here this morning and we've been pursuing a path of technology, believing that the internet, social media, AI, and all these new advancements that are coming down the pipeline are going to connect us better together, yet we are still finding ourselves lonely, disconnected, and relationally unfulfilled. Are we pursuing a path of status, using our education, our careers to rise in our class system to try to find worth, acceptance, and respect, but all we do is feel like an imposter. We still feel insecure, and we're experiencing this ongoing, simmering sense of rejection that the path of status cannot fix in us. Maybe we are going down the path of wealth, believing that the more money we acquire is going to make us happier. It's going to make us more content. It's going to give us more security. But yet none of those things are coming to fruition the more our bank account grows. Maybe we're going down this path of valuing a certain type of family or relationship that the world idolizes. We still feel like we are going to chase after what our society says is the right thing, the spouse, the kids, the picket fence, the Hallmark Christmas card gatherings that are going to make us feel fulfilled and meaning, but yet somehow there's something lacking in it. Lots of people are pursuing the path of hedonism that our culture promises is going to bring us joy. Yes, pursue pleasure, pursue experiences, pursue as many conveniences as you possibly can, and your life is going to be great. But it keeps letting us down because our misery keeps coming back, and the ability to avoid pain and sacrifice, all it's doing to us is making us soft and less resilient as a person. Are we pursuing the path of materialism, working hard to perfect an outer image with the right clothes, the right cars, the right jewelry, the right hair, and what other symbols and accessories we need to show and to prove the world that everything is good, we are good. We want to display this image of perfection. It might look right on the inside, but yet we are still in turmoil on the inside. And we know that what we are projecting to others does not reflect the reality of who we are, and now we just have a bunch of added stress because of all the debt we've gone into. Are we pursuing the path of religion instead of pursuing relationship with Christ? Believing that traditions, sacraments, services, and rituals are going to sustain a vibrant spiritual life inside of us, but yet there is this hollowness that keeps persisting. A lot of people pursue the path of morality. Being a good person becomes the ultimate goal in life. But yet deep down we know that we are unable to truly attain goodness, no matter how much we try to convince others that we can. Tim Keller, a famous preacher who pastored in New York City, I think he wrote this. I'm going to read it, but it's a parable, a modern-day parable. He says, we often hear someone say, well, I'm not very religious, but I'm a good person, and that's what's most important. But is that true? Imagine a woman, a poor widow with an only son. She teaches him how she wants him to live, to always tell the truth, to always work hard, and to always help the poor. She makes very little money, but with her meager savings, she is able to put her son through college. Now imagine that whenever he graduates, he hardly ever speaks to his mother again. He occasionally sends a Christmas card, but he doesn't visit her. He won't even answer the phone or respond to any of her letters. He just doesn't speak to her. But yet he lives just how she taught him to live. Honestly, industriously, and charitably. Would we say that this is acceptable? Of course not. Wouldn't we say by living a good life, but neglecting a relationship with the one to whom he owed everything, he was doing something commendable or right? In the same way, God created us, and we owe him everything. And we do not live for him, but we live a good life, and it's just not enough. We all owe a debt that must be paid. Being a good person is just not enough. As we prepare to close this morning, is there something resonating in us as we sit here together in this church? Is there something that the Holy Spirit is doing, confirming that we ourselves have somehow gotten lost, we have somehow gotten turned around, we are in some way distracted, we have somehow drifted off course? Is there anything that we can sense and see and notice in ourselves, or are we all here this morning saying we're just doing life perfectly? The list that I gave us is just a small sample of ways that we get off course. There are so many ways that we can. Some of us are choosing isolation and hiding. Others of us are choosing outrage and hostility. Some of us are choosing independence and self-sufficiency. Others are going down a path of nihilism and despair. Some of us are going down the path of numbing and avoidance, and others of us are just living in a path of indifference. Whether we can identify more with the rebellion of Levi, or maybe we identify more with the self-righteousness of the Pharisees, whichever camp we find ourselves in, this passage provides such immense hope for us today. Because Jesus clearly states, the very reason I have come is not to help those who have it all together. I have come to help those who don't have it all together. I am a God who is intervening in humanity to help the hurting, to help the sick, to help those of us who are off track. Jesus wants to restore us. Jesus wants to come and redirect us. He wants to heal us. And if Levi, one of the worst offenders, could course correct, that means you and I can as well. Think about how far off course Levi had gotten in his life. And yet, through the power of Jesus, he course corrects back. Think about the fact of we sit and we feel so ashamed and we feel so guilty as if God doesn't love us or God is angry with us and he wants nothing to do with us because of our habitual sin or the mistakes that we've made or you name it. And we live with this sense of God doesn't love me, God doesn't want me, but God demonstrates that he wanted Levi. He stopped at Levi's booth and said, I want to redeem you. I want to save you. Not just I want you to come into heaven, I want you to be one of my 12 disciples. Think about that. I want to take you, the worst of the worst, and make you someone who is closest with me. That's incredible. So if Jesus is able to do this with Levi, if he's able to see the potential in Levi to become one of the 12, he sees potential in you and me today, and the same call that rang true for Levi, it's true for us. He believes in us. He desires us. He wants us to be his follower. He wants to be us to be his children. He wants to be connected and close to us. But we find it so hard to admit that we need to change. Just like how I find it so difficult to want to ask for directions, just how I resist going to the doctor, we just have such a hard time admitting that we are wrong, admitting that we need help, or admitting that we are struggling. Why? Because it makes us feel weak. It makes us feel ashamed. It makes us feel too vulnerable. I mean, how in the world can I have lived life this way for so long, pursuing the things that I've been pursuing, to just end up in the place that I'm at, and now I'm going to have to admit that, was that all worthless? Have I been on the wrong track this whole time? Has my own wisdom failed me for so many years? We are overly stubborn. But I think we're overly stubborn because we're overly afraid. So what do? We keep moving forward. We keep moving forward day after day, maintaining the status quo, not changing anything, not allowing anything to change, just sort of believing that somehow something's going to happen. It reminds me of that one non-clinical definition of insanity that's attributed to Albert Einstein. Doing the same thing over and over, yet expecting different results. We become delusional to think that we can keep traveling the same paths that we are in life without ever needing to course correct, and that one day it's just going to produce something different for us in our life. When are we going to be ready to stop resisting and say, I'm going to course correct? Hope today would be the day. You know, the truth is, I'm human, you're human, we know this. Human nature is we don't like to course correct until we hit rock bottom, right? That tends to be when the course corrections really come in our life. We've become overly desperate. Now we're at the end of our rope. We've tried everything. We've burned every bridge in our life. We're at such a place of desperation. Now we are finally broken enough to realize that we have to adjust and that we have to change. And if that is you this morning, if you are in a state where you're like, that's me, I am rock bottom, I don't know what to do, I don't know where to go, I'm at the end of it, I'm here to tell you that Jesus is calling you. And that he, through his power, can redeem you, restore you, and set you on the right path. But the truth is that we don't need to hit rock bottom before we make changes, amen? Jesus is interested in us making minor adjustments in our lives as well. It's not just about waiting till things get so catastrophic and so out of control that now we're going to change. No, the good life is found by us being able to make those minor adjustments before they become major influences in our life. And if that's us today and you're like, yeah, like I might not be at my, the end of myself, but I know that I've drifted here. This is not right here. Like I can sort of see how I'm just drifting off track. Today is the day to come back, just how Levi responded to Jesus and say, I'm going to make this course correction. If we're here this morning and there's something in us that just is resisting, like I don't want to do this, you know what? If we don't do it, guess what that makes us? A Pharisee. Because you know who didn't do the course corrections? The Pharisees. Jesus is ready and he's waiting for us. He's come for those of us who are sick, but are we ready to admit that we are ill? He has come for the lost. Are we ready to admit that we need help finding our way? He has come for the broken. Are we ready this morning to admit that we need to be stitched back together? Are we ready to admit that all that we are doing, trying to find answers to our loneliness, our pain, our unfulfillment, our malaise, our lack of purpose, our hollowness, our discontentment, our lack of peace, our lack of joy, and our lack of hope, we can't solve it all ourselves? Are we ready to admit that? Are we ready to turn to Jesus? This morning, I'm going to ask us to do something difficult. Because churches should be a place where we can make those course corrections. They should be safe places for us to be able to admit our need because we're all broken and we're all human. I believe course corrections need to be made in every single person's life in this room, including my own. Why? Because we're sinners and we don't trust Jesus perfectly.